So I am Matthew Schutte, and I'm here with Jim Cook.
Hey, everybody.
Jim is the Chief Financial Officer at Mozilla. Yay, we all like Mozilla. And let's actually start with a little bit of your background. Just what else did you do? What was life BM before Mozilla?
Yeah, well, so I've been in the Valley about 25 years. Started out at Intuit at a 100-person company when we had a one product named Quicken. Spent 5 years there and did a bunch of stuff, including the IPO and purchasing ChipsOff, which is now TurboTax, and a bunch of things. Quickly moved into e-commerce. Did one of the first e-commerce startups, Internet Shopping Network. Lasted about a year and a half before we started the company that you all now know as Netflix. There were 6 of us who started this small little DVD by mail company, which those of you who are old enough may remember as red envelopes going through the mail. It's not the Netflix of today, but that's the company we started. Streaming didn't come in until 2008 or 9, 10 years later. So that company is now 20 years old. I have to remind people. It's wild. So a few things, and those were a few successes and a huge failure after that in Wine Shopper, where we put $200 million of a hole into a ground during the 1999 e-commerce days, with Amazon and Kleiner Perkins as our backers. So that, so a lot of lessons, and then Mozilla since 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
when we were about 18. So yeah.
Wait. Since 2005, and what was that?
I started Mozilla. We were about 18 people in 2005 when we first launched. 18 employees, I should say. Many tens of thousands of volunteers. But as far as an actual company, the actual company had just gotten off the ground, and we were building all the infrastructure. And now we're a 1,200 person, dozen offices all over the world, and we've grown and we've survived against the big behemoths like Google and others.
And a lot of folks don't know what Mozilla is. What are you guys known for, and what makes you unique?
Yes, I assume that. So, we make the Firefox browser. That's our first and foremost product. But the mission of Mozilla is to keep the web open and to be open and transparent and push everything out to the edges, to the users, and to decentralize the power of the internet, and really just to keep the web open through all sorts of products and programs and evangelism. And so we are the fiercely independent internet steward, web steward, if you will.
Yeah, I first moved to San Francisco. I'd gone to law school at Berkeley, but I moved back to San Francisco in 2000, at the end of 2011, and there was basically one company, nonprofit, whatever, that I was like, well, if anybody gets what I'm working on, it's going to be those guys,
Right.
So,
right.
And then you and I got a chance to dance together for the first time around the Bay Lights, right?
There you go. Yep. Illuminate the arts. We just sponsored, or we did a little bit. We weren't the thing. That was Ben, and Matthew. You introduced us to Ben, and then we helped put the lights in the Bay Bridge, or at least give space for that to happen and a little bit of money for that to happen. So that was great.
Yeah, they were trying to keep it running for an extra 10 years, and then that succeeded.
There you go.
We were trying to prove that it would make a difference if they kept the lights up, I think. And I came in and facilitated, and you and I hit it off, and it was like, ooh, friends to play with. And we've been getting to play together a little bit more recently, thanks to Holochain, us finally getting something out into the world. I mean, you've been wonderfully supportive and a wonderful mentor for me personally. Yasha as well. Yasha, the chief marketing officer.
Yep.
Have both been, just your team is incredible. But we've been, heads down and trying to work on all of our stuff, and only over the last 6 months have actually started putting things out into the world, and now we're stepping out in a sort of a bigger way. And you've been sponsoring our meetups in the Bay Area, and so very grateful for that.
Yep.
And obviously this call is basically about, let's talk about what it is that you're excited about, what we're excited about. I obviously would like to chat at some point about the future of browsers.
There you go.
But
I'll let you. A much longer conversation on that one, but yeah. So I think do you want me to go, or do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I'll let you go.
I can just riff because that's what you and I do. We riff a lot. Um, yeah, so Mozilla since the early days has always been about, we talk a lot at Mozilla about the centralization of power, power of information, power of communication, and the decentralization of that power. We are students of history, and as the internet is just an extension of the software world, really, and now we're moving into the cloud as an extension of that, and all the social media are all just extensions of technology. Well, technology in the early days, when software first was born, in the 60s and 70s, and really started taking off in the 80s, it was very independent, a bunch of independent software makers, and that lasted about 10 years until it started getting consolidated into the hands of a few, as we remember as Microsoft and IBM and others. And that lasted about 10 years until, the likes of Google and others came along, and then, broke apart and even Netscape broke about the power and the monopoly of these centralized powers. So there's a cycle. There's almost a biological cycle in the technology industry where power centralizes and decentralizes. We believe at Mozilla that the power has been centralizing once again, from what was fiercely independent, like anything goes on the web, into the power of a few. We're partners, and we don't dislike these companies, but the power that you're seeing with Facebook, the power that you're seeing with Apple, the power that you're seeing with Google, is not the best thing in the world for end users. And we believe that power will decentralize in the next cycle. These things go in cycles, and you're seeing in blockchain. So blockchain's the same way. So blockchain's this new technology, and everybody sees Bitcoin as the poster child of blockchain. It's really just an application on top of blockchain, but the power is getting centralized very quickly in blockchain. And what I love about Holochain and Mozilla, and the connection of Holochain and Mozilla, is this concept of decentralizing the power. So you guys are way ahead of the game, because I don't think the power has centralized yet. And it will take a while for power to centralize on the blockchain, or even in Bitcoin or the Ethereums of the world. But when it does, those of you like Holochain who are thinking about decentralizing power now are going to be ahead of the game, because the cycle will come. So I'll just stop there and pause, because I know you're thinking about stuff. Matthew, I lost your voice there. Is that me or the whole video?
No, it was because I was muted. Sorry. So yeah, the way I think about it is that you can have the intent of decentralizing something, or the intent of pushing power to the edges, but it's the architecture that dictates. And Tim Berners-Lee, for those folks at home that don't know him, he inventor of the World Wide Web. He realized pretty quickly after he came out with the World Wide Web that, whoops, I did it wrong. And he spent the last 25 years trying to do something slightly different, because he saw the ways in which it was limited, the ways in which power would concentrate, the ways in which it wouldn't enable the richness of communication and coordination that he saw as possible. And he's not the only one. There's lots of other folks who came before, who have had similar visions, and lots of folks who've come after. And so many of us, there's whole communities, many of them revolving around Mozilla, that are passionate about this stuff. But for the most part, these are like these weird oddball, eccentrics who are going, no, it matters. And it seemed like we're at a special moment in history with Facebook and the Cambridge Analytica stuff and all of that, where the whole world is going, oh, wait a minute, this matters.
Yes.
The internet.
Mozilla, I have to remind everybody that Mozilla at one time was an oddball eccentric, just like you described. Netflix at one time was an oddball eccentric. I think if you aren't an oddball eccentric and you aren't on the edges, you're probably not doing something really influential enough, right? And so I kind of lean that way. And I see Holochain as maybe right now in the very early days, an oddball eccentric who's got the right thinking around it. And I'm pretty excited by all your ideas of peer-to-peer applications. and marrying and putting the power out to the edges, not in the center. The concept that it's different than blockchain, and especially your agent-centric model, really speaks to Mozilla. When you talk about user agency and making the you at the center, not your data or at the center, or the blocks of data at the center.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the way that there's a friend of ours who's been helping us. I think she got the first license ever to a TEDx event, a woman named Nancy Giordano, who is actually how I got introduced to the Metacurrency Project, which is what Holochain is coming out of. She's the one who introduced me to Arthur Brock, one of the founders. And she describes what we're doing as turning the internet inside out.
Yep.
Instead of there being domains or so almost these like spaces or places that we're going to, where it's, oh, I'm going to Facebook and then I come back out. I'm going to Twitter and I come back out. I'm going to Airbnb and coming back out. Instead of that, which is an architecture that has led everybody on the planet who's using the internet today to feel like they're being pulled in 40 different ways at once, right? We all feel torn and stressed and short on time because every one of these spaces is not just a space, it's usually a business competing for our time. And so in order to win that game, they're doing everything they can to addict us and distract us and get us to spend our time there playing their game. Right? And what we're trying to do with Holochain is to flip that around and make it so that applications aren't a space. They're not a place you go to. They're a language you speak.
There you go.
They're a grammar.
And then connecting those applications together as the starting point, not the edge points where you have to always come back to the center. The center is just something you have to deal with, not the starting point. The starting point should be the applications. And so this concept that you have, when Holochain talks about this mesh network of transactions versus a series of data blocks, which is what blockchain is, the serial nature of a set of data blocks strung together in blocks on a chain, I get it. It's a gigantic database, but wouldn't it be better? And what I think is really interesting and what I'm really intrigued by with Holochain is this mesh network of transactions in which the apps are on the edges and you only go to the center when you need to.
Yeah, you're coming into alignment with others where that's useful to each of those parties. And that serial versus parallel thing, the way I think about it is, would you rather have 4 chargers for your phone, 4 different devices, and be able to plug them in simultaneously? Or would you rather be going, okay, I'm plugging this one in, and then after that's finished charging, I'm going to then get to put my other thing on, and then we'll charge that, and then I'm going to get to which of those is going to be better for you? And now imagine designing the entire world so that our communication was structured in a way where you had to do it one after the other. That's blockchain right now, right? And it's a really limiting way of trying to communicate. It's just, it doesn't have the because it doesn't put the user in the middle, because it puts the network in the middle and tries to create this universal truth. It's incapable of handling the complexity. It's incapable of adapting. In the real world, I can try out some new word, and if it proves useful, I'll keep using it. And then you might hear it from me, and you might start using it, and that word can propagate across the community. But it's propagating through the agents.
Right.
And this pattern is what enables the community to adapt. It's what makes language so adaptable. It's what makes culture so adaptable. The culture is held within the participants themselves. And so it's how we do language. It's how we do culture. It's not yet how we do digital communication.
Right. And this concept of digital communication and start, so the thing that I'm really intrigued by is how do we start simply, as simple as possible, and as easily as possible and as familiar as possible. Because we talk about a lot of concepts in blockchain, and we talk a lot of concepts in technology in Holochain, but we're not yet making it familiar and easy. And let's try this and making it familiar in step 1, step 2. So that's what I'm most excited about, is being on the ground floor with you at Holochain and trying to figure this out with some of the brightest minds at Mozilla. So that's exciting. Yeah,
I totally agree. And actually, to be very honest, I think we're doing a really good job on the product, like the actual code itself. I think we're doing a good job on, iterating our way forward. But
for sure,
and I think we're doing really good job on community building,
Sure.
improvements made there, but I think we're doing a really bad job on communication. I think we have lots of improvement, in that there's so much to communicate because it's such a foreign way of looking at the world.
Right.
And I think at some level, because we've been off in our own little wilderness for so long, we're kind of insecure about it. So we're wanting to share all of it at once.
Right.
Like, look how brilliant our things are,
Right.
And
Right.
I suffer from that.
Right.
But I think we're just about to start hitting our stride in going, here's the first thing. And people go, oh, that's interesting. And here's the next thing. Oh, and that's actually one of the reasons why I love the strategy that we come up with about Holo host, which is Holochain's a pattern. It's not even a platform. Holochain is a way of communicating. So other people can build applications and they can run them themselves. We might never even know about it, let alone be able to monetize it. Right?
Yeah, it's tapping back into the hacker world, really. It's tapping back into that developer world, for sure.
That's right. So that's Holochain. It doesn't have any mining, no cryptocurrency. There's no web server in the middle. It's just the users themselves speaking the way that they want to speak with one another using their own devices. And it's lightweight enough that if you did Twitter with 1 billion users, and it's OG Twitter, 140 character text messages, in 6 months' time, you'd have as much storage on your device as one photograph. That's crazy. And so the question becomes, are you willing to bear that burden in order to be in control of your own life? And our bet is, yeah, exactly, right. But Holo host is a little different. Holo host is actually about solving that second problem that you pointed out, which is, how do you make it frictionless?
Right.
And so Holo host is really about building a bridge back to the existing current centralized web, where somebody types in it, they open their browser, they type in a URL, and a website comes back. They don't know they're doing something new. They just think they're interacting with a website. They don't realize there's a community on the back end, not a company.
Right.
But on the back end, Holo host has a bunch of peers that are going, I'll serve websites out to those folks.
Yep.
In exchange for getting paid.
This is the distributed architecture you talk about, and it's very exciting. It's possible. Yeah. And the fact that it's possible makes it exciting.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's funny, like, people have been excited about doing peer-to-peer web hosting for a long time, but nobody's pulled it off because they weren't able to come up with an accounting system that could do millions or billions of transactions, even if those transactions were worth like a penny. The costs of the accounting alone were too high. And we think we solved that thanks to this distributed architecture. And so the other thing that gets funny is they don't understand how big that is. Right. And the way I try to make it visible is, Amazon is the 3rd largest company on the planet. Web hosting, their Amazon Web Services business, makes up about 10% of their revenue, but accounts for more profit than everything else combined.
Right.
So web hosting is the cash cow for the 3rd largest company on the planet. And they're not alone in that game. There's a bunch of other companies that are doing that same exact game and making lots of dough off of it.
Right.
So you can think about what we're up to as Holo host is about doing to Amazon's cash cow what Uber did to taxis.
And no one person controlling it. I think that's the key thing. This isn't about the money; it's about the technology and putting the power and the money back into the hands of the people that are the creators.
That's right.
And that's where it belongs. Not, I've created this thing and I get 30% or 70% or whatever, but I'm controlled by the big giants.
That's right. It's not Apple's 30% cut. It's not Uber setting rates. We're doing 1% or less as a transaction fee so that we can nourish the maturation of Holo host as well as Holochain. That's our vehicle for subsidizing the larger ecosystem. So we're getting 50% of our revenues going right back into the bottom, right back into the bigger picture stuff.
You need enough for the support infrastructure, but not enough, but not too much. And there's plenty to go around. And I think the biggest message is the right architecture, as you say, can put the power and the economic value back into the hands where it belongs, which is the individual users. I think that's the powerful thing.
Yeah. The one other thing that's exciting that I'm really excited about is this meta browser something project. Like, we'll see. But this, hey, if we're going to be able to be having multiple applications that I'm speaking with and I can treat them as if they're one, we want a new browser. And who better to build that with? Like, you guys are so solid there. And yet it's going to be new patterns, kind of.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, we should experiment. I'm only the CFO there, so we can get you in touch with the developers and all of our technologists, and we've yet to do that, but that's the next step, quite frankly.
Yeah, yeah.
This is how this stuff develops, and this is how this stuff works.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Any last thoughts? Any like kind of big takeaway?
Just what I said before. Just incredibly excited about when Holochain talks about the agent-centric model, or putting the power back into the hands of the users. When Holochain talks about that, Mozilla's ears perk up. You're talking our language. When you talk about pushing the power to the edges of the new internet, or creating a new internet through applications, we really get excited. This is what we've been thinking about too. So those are the final thoughts, but that's what intrigues me the most about the connection between Holochain and what Mozilla is trying to do.
Awesome. Jim, thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. Enjoy.
Talk to you soon.
All right, bye.